Scars of Time. Chapter 1. The Beginning of the End. The scorching sun hung over the barren land of Oklahoma like a giant blazing disk, sucking the last drops of moisture from the cracked earth. The Carter farm, once fertile and bountiful, now resembled a desert. Jack Carter stood on the porch of his home, his empty gaze fixed on the parched ground. His hands, roughened by years of labor, hung limply at his sides. These hands, which once could till the soil, plant seeds, and harvest a rich crop, now seemed utterly useless. "Dad, do we still have a chance?" a quiet voice asked behind him. It was Sam, his 17-year-old son, standing in the doorway with hollow eyes. Jack couldn't meet his gaze. He knew the hope he had so desperately tried to keep alive in his son's heart was beginning to fade. "I don't know, Sam," Jack murmured, still staring into the distance. "I don't know." Mary Carter, Jack's wife, stepped out onto the porch, holding their 10-year-old daughter Lucy by the hand. The girl looked frightened, her large eyes shimmering with tears she was trying to hold back. Mary knelt down in front of her daughter, gently stroking her hair. "It's going to be all right, sweetie," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "We'll find a new home, where everything will be different." But deep down, Mary knew her words were hollow. The Great Depression had engulfed their small world, destroying everything in its path. The Carter farm was just one of thousands that had been abandoned when the price of agricultural products plummeted and droughts wiped out crops. No amount of effort or prayer could restore what had been lost. That evening, Jack gathered the family in the kitchen. On the worn wooden table lay the meager remains of their dinner, cornbread and a few beans. They ate in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Finally, Jack broke the silence. "I sold the farm," he said, not lifting his eyes. "We leave tomorrow." The words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Mary, who had known this day would come, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Sam clenched his fists, his heart filling with bitterness and despair. Lucy, not fully grasping the seriousness of the situation, quietly asked, "Where are we going, Daddy?" "West, to California," Jack replied, trying to sound confident. "They say there's work there. We'll start a new life." That night, no one in the Carter house slept. Mary quietly packed their belongings, holding each item as if it were the last piece of their former life. Sam sat by the window, watching as the moon slowly rose over the desolate field. Lucy curled up in her bed, clutching an old rag doll to her chest. At dawn, Jack walked around the farm one last time. He remembered how his father, and before him his grandfather, had grown wheat, corn, and cotton here. How he and Mary had built this house with their own hands, planning to raise their children here. Now all of it was gone. The old truck parked by the house was loaded to the brim. Clothes, a few blankets, some food, tools. Everything that was left of their life fit into this truck. Jack knew that ahead of them lay uncertainty, possibly even greater trials. But they had no other choice. "It's time to go," he said, returning to the house. Mary nodded, her face pale but determined. Sam helped Lucy climb into the back seat, then got in himself. Jack took one last look at the house, then started the engine. The motor roared to life, and the truck slowly rolled down the dusty road, taking the Carters away from the place they had once called home. Chapter 2. Road to Nowhere. The old truck carrying the Carters moved slowly along the dusty road, leaving a thin trail of dust behind it. The sun beat down mercilessly, and everything around seemed dry and lifeless. Sam sat in the front seat, gazing gloomily ahead, while Lucy, nestled against Mary in the back, quietly played with the rag doll she called Maggie. "How much longer, Dad?" Lucy asked softly, not taking her eyes off her toy. "I don't know, sweetie," Jack replied, gripping the wheel tighter. He tried not to show his anxiety, but the fear of the unknown gnawed at him from within. The road was long, and there was no end in sight. They passed through several towns, almost ghostly in their emptiness. Shattered houses, empty stores, and solitary figures trudging along the roadside painted a bleak picture. Jack pulled into a gas station, but their money was running low, and he could only afford a few gallons of gasoline. At the gas station, they met Harry Wilson, a former sheriff who, like them, had lost everything. His once strong frame was now gaunt, his face weathered and worn. He looked at the Carters with the same exhaustion they saw in each other's eyes. "Where are you headed?" he asked, glancing at the truck. "California," Jack answered. "They say there's work there." "Everyone's heading there," Harry said grimly, "but there might not be enough work for all." Jack understood that the chances of finding something in California were slim, but it was their last hope. Harry offered to join them on their journey, but Jack, feeling uncertain, thanked him and declined. "We'll manage on our own," he said, trying to sound confident. Harry nodded, understanding his decision. He knew that everyone was now forced to rely solely on themselves. As they hit the road again, a heavy silence hung in the air. Lucy soon fell asleep, and Sam, lost in thought, continued to stare grimly ahead. That evening, they stopped to rest in an abandoned house by the roadside. Sam helped Jack build a small fire, trying to warm themselves against the cold night air of the desert. Seeing his sister's suffering, Sam began to feel a deep anger toward the world. He clenched his fists, fighting back tears. "This is all because we left," he thought. "If we'd stayed on the farm, it would have been easier." Mary, noticing his tension, sat beside him. She took his hand and gently said, "Sam, I know it's hard. I see how much it hurts. But we need to stick together. We did everything we could to save ourselves." Sam remained silent, but the pain still boiled within him. Mary continued, "Sometimes life tests us in ways we didn't expect, but we're stronger than we think. We'll get through this together, and I believe there's something better ahead." These words made an impression on Sam. He looked at his mother, at her tired but still loving face, and felt his heart begin to soften. "I'll help you, Dad," he finally said. That night, the Carters huddled together, trying to stay warm and hold on to hope. Chapter 3: Hunger and Cold. Weeks passed, and the Carters were still moving west, but the journey was growing harder. They had crossed deserts and mountains, and each day was a test of endurance. Winter had come unexpectedly early, and the cold seeped into every crack of the old truck they called home. "Daddy, I'm cold," Lucy said, clutching her rag doll. Her small body shivered under the thin blanket. "We'll find a place to stop soon," Jack reassured her, though he knew finding shelter from the cold would be difficult. That evening, they stopped in the mountains, where snow covered the ground, turning everything into an icy wasteland. Jack and Sam tried to build a fire, but the wood they gathered was too wet. Mary wrapped Lucy in all the blankets they had, but the girl still complained of the cold. Seeing his sister's misery, Sam's anger towards the world deepened. He clenched his fists, trying to hold back tears. "This is all because we left," he thought. "If we'd stayed on the farm, things would have been easier." Jack noticed. He knew his son blamed him for their troubles. "Sam," Jack called quietly, choosing his words carefully. "I know it's hard, but we have to stay together. I did everything I could to save us." Sam remained silent, but the pain still gnawed at him. Mary, sitting beside them, gently added, "We're stronger than we think. We'll get through this together, and I believe there's something better ahead." These words struck a chord with Sam. He looked at his mother's tired but still loving face and felt his heart begin to thaw. "I'll help you, Dad," he finally said. That night, the Carters huddled together, trying to stay warm and not lose hope. Chapter 4. Last Hope. The next morning, Lucy awoke with a fever. Her face was pale, and her breathing was labored. Mary, seeing her daughter's condition, held her close in panic. "Jack, what are we going to do?" she asked frantically. Jack didn't know what to say. The only option was to find a town and try to get medicine, but the road ahead was long and dangerous. "We have to keep moving," he said, trying not to show his fear. "Maybe we'll find help in the next town." They set off, and each mile felt like an eternity. Lucy lay in the back seat, her breathing growing weaker. Sam held her hand, trying to give her strength. Mary kept her eyes fixed on her daughter, praying for her recovery. Finally, after a long day of travel, they reached a small town. It was one of those places where life had ground to a halt because of the Great Depression, but people still lived there. Jack stopped the truck by an old barn and went in search of help. He found a pharmacy where an elderly pharmacist agreed to sell him some medicine in exchange for the last few coins they had. Returning, Jack saw Mary tending to Lucy in the barn where they had decided to spend the night. He handed Mary the medicine, and she carefully administered it to their daughter. That night, Jack sat outside the barn, trying to gather his thoughts. Mary joined him and sat beside him. "You did everything you could," she said, placing her hand on his shoulder. "Now it's in fate's hands." "I can't lose her," Jack whispered. "I can't." "She's a strong girl," Mary said. "Like her father. She'll pull through." These words gave Jack some comfort, but the anxiety still gnawed at him. That night, he prayed for his family's salvation and a new home. Chapter 5. Light at the End of the Road. A few days later, after Lucy began to recover, the Carters set out once again. They knew California was close, and this gave them strength. The road became easier, and the weather warmer. Jack felt they were nearing their goal. Finally, they reached California. The first thing that struck them were the green fields and fertile lands, so different from what they had seen during their long journey. Sam looked out the truck window and smiled for the first time in a long while. "We can start over here," Jack said, feeling a weight lift from his soul. They stopped at one of the farms, where workers were needed. The farmer, who owned the land, offered them work and a small house on the edge of the field. It wasn't much, but for the Carters, it meant everything. "We made it, Jack," Mary said, embracing him. "We made it." Lucy, now fully recovered, ran through the field, picking flowers. Her laughter filled the air, bringing joy to her parents' hearts. Sam helped Jack unload the truck, for the first time feeling confident about the future. Ahead of them lay a new life, full of challenges, but also hope. They knew the road would still be tough, but now, together, they were unafraid. That night, for the first time in a long while, the Carters slept peacefully, knowing that a new dawn awaited them. The end. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel and don't forget to hit the like button. Thank you for your attention. During the height of the Great Depression, the Carter family from Oklahoma loses everything. Their farm is dry, their hopes shattered, and all that lies ahead is uncertainty. Together with his wife, son, and daughter, Jack Carter sets out west to California, where work is rumored to be found. But on this journey, they face harsh trials: hunger, cold, and despair. Will they be able to hold on to their humanity and find a new home? Subscribe, hit the like button, and follow the link in the description to listen to the full version of this heartfelt story.